This is a low-rent how to paint Glavewraith Stalkers video. The final minis, when properly lit and photographed, look like this. I find brush-on priming to be slow and nerve-wracking, so I use spray that lets me add an easy zenithal highlight. There's a dark gray or very thin zenithal highlight over this black undercoat. That's it. Given the scale that I'm trying to work at, the zenithal highlighting is a bit redundant. Those glazes really shine because of the next step, the dry brushing part of this underpainting approach. That's just Corax white all over the place, and immediately you could get away with a friendly game using minis painted like this. I did too much Lego when I was little, so I'm nearsighted. However, even I can't really pick out the details of a miniature in a battlefield of solid gray or solid black, so if you're going to a game and you're getting on with this, please dry brush the minis so that your eyes and your opponent's eyes can pick them out much more easily. It is so much better than bringing solid black, even if nobody notices. Anyway, let's continue by painting the bottom half of the robe solid black. I lied. This isn't a solid black. It's really a very thinned, translucent black that still lets the previous layer's highlights pick through just barely, while at the same time tinting the whole thing evenly down black, as opposed to Nuln Oil, which we would shove into the cracks to give only the cracks black tinting.
For no particular reason, I decided to paint the bones next. Both the bone on the skull bone and the bones that were part of the base. I want to keep the rest of the ghost flesh, but the bone of the head I want to do as a bone for these ones. I've done the skulls on 3 out of the 4 glaive wraiths at this point, and I've done the bones on all of the bases. Again, it's a thin coat over the earlier underpainting to really leave that sort of shape definition coming through, and it works because even though the Rakarth flesh is a bright color, it's still darker than the Corax white that was used for the underpainting.
An astute viewer may have noticed that I have already painted the gray stone on the bases with Mechanis Standard Gray. Once again, this was done with a very thin coat, just like the Rakarth flesh, so that while I'm still trying to definitely color the surface, I'm not at all worried if the original zenithal highlighting and dry brushing, underpainting sort of stuff, if that shows through, we're still good. The whole point is for it to show through. In the next step, you're going to see Baneblade Brown painted all over the weapon halves. The robes were always blue. With the brown on the weapon halves, the whole piece is really just starting to look interesting. Once again, this was done with a glazing and layering mishmash approach where the paint was translucent enough to still let hints of the underpainting poke through, while at the same time most definitely covering and coloring the whole area. Silver is next. Silver and red are the only colors that we sort of want to do completely opaque or almost totally opaque. The silver paint I'm working with is Leadbelcher, and it's really only used on the glaives themselves and the wire and grating on the bases. So while the metallic paints themselves are slow to work with, this step's not actually too hard or long to finish. So next, I'd like to apply a Reikland Flesh Shade to the metallics to give them that really flesh shady look, which looks rusted, and also get Dryad Bark on the branches on the bases, because the branches on the bases are barky. So the weapons immediately look horrid and vile and gross, and that's fine. We don't need to get into that. What we do need to get into is how awesome those little roots look, and I'm feeling pretty good about that. So what do you say we continue, huh? Shading the bones is next, and I also did all the little bits of debris on the bases at the same time. Throwing a bit of shade on all the bones adds a bit more depth to them, something that is really necessary with, well, miniature painting. You need to force depth onto things. I think I also did the halves of the weapons, probably not the roots, but definitely the bones on the little ghosts, and the bones on the little crow, look at it, and the bones on the base. I also just sort of slobbered it around all those little bits of dirt on the base that had no other color, and called those done, called that a day. Throughout all of this, I have used only the paints and only the brushes that come with the Mortal Realms magazine. So for this shading of the dirt and the bones, I chose to use this pot of Agrax Earthshade, which came with the Death Guard and paint set. Life is a lie. We're getting so close to the end, but no low-tier YouTube painting video is complete without black wash. Given the tier we're working in, I'm legally obliged to use a technical paint for the ghost skin, and oxide is the only one I've got. Good thing it looks great. That nice black Nuln Oil was really just run over the stones and the metal grating and fencing on the base, you know, the little base details, as well as in a few cracks around the base where I wasn't happy with the tone, with the color. And it was relatively simple to just dull everything down. The oxide technical paint is kind of interesting from a technical perspective. I think it's a glaze, but we're not allowed to say that unless we want to hear three people jump down your throat about how you're supposed to use it to paint corrosion onto minis. Regardless, here we're using it to paint the ghost flesh over the underpainting, so you might just want it straight from the pot. You might want it straight from the pot in several layers. I think most of the time it's pretty easy to use, even if it's a bit slow, but hey, it comes out pretty nice. Next to the last step, the mini looks great. The mini should look great. It's almost done. But they want the little bit of zazz going on, and there's all these little leaves we've left until now. You could do a couple of different colors with them, but again, I'm trying to stick to just what's in the Mortal Realms magazine and just what I've gotten so far, which means red's about my only choice. Let's paint all the flowers across all the Nighthaunt models red. Are they flowers? Maybe they're little drops of blood who think they're flowers. I built up little red flower petals on the bases. All that is left is to rim them. Now we're on to the last real step, which is painting the outsides of the bases with Dryad bark. I'm doing this because Dryad bark matches Stirland mud, and all the ones with non-scenic bases I'm going to base by using the Stirland mud that comes with the magazine. Had to pull them out of the handles to rim them. And for once, I tried rimming them straight from the pot. It was amazing. I will be rimming bases. I will be painting base rims straight from the pot in the future. For now, I'm going to come back with Nuln Oil and pick off a few white bits on the base that I don't like. But I'm going to call these done. This was an unlisted video trying to explain how I painted my second set of Glaive Wraiths using just the paints that were in the Mortal Realms magazines. What would really do the useful YouTube-y things would be liking and subscribing to this account. Or not.